start to talk to other people that stutter and a community that accepts it, you start to realize that you have a lot of shared experiences and you're not the only one that went through something or has these thoughts about your speech. And just knowing that makes you feel a lot more accepting of it.
Welcome to Some Stutter Law, Newfoundland Labrador's first podcast about living with communication disorders. It is a production of the Communication Collaborative. My name is Greg O'Grady, and I am a person who stutters and your host. Some Stutter Law aims to rebuild confidence and hope for people who live with communication differences by dismantling myths, stigma, stereotypes, and barriers. For more information about the Communication Collaborative or this podcast, you can find us at somestutterlaw.ca. If you only get one thing from this podcast, we hope it's this. It's okay to stutter and it's okay to communicate differently. It's not how we communicate that's important, it's the message that's important. Today, Some Stutter Law welcomes Dr. Bilkha. Uh, Dr. Bilkha was recently a guest on Some Stutter Law. He was joined by two of his colleagues from the Stuttering Scholarship Alliance, now renamed My Speech, to discuss the great work that this amazing organization is doing. My Speech is a non-profit organization dedicated to providing a bridge to access for people who stutter, otherwise facing barriers of access, to achieve their full potential and receive effective speech therapy. During this conversation, I managed to get a glimpse of Dr. Bilkha's lived experience as a person who stutters and was impressed with his passion for giving back by paying it forward to support the stuttering community for the support that he has and is currently receiving. So to find out more about his story, I thought some Stutter Law guest revisit interview was in order. Doctor Bilkha is a pharmacist by trade and in his day job serves as a national program manager for the emergency pharmacy services at the largest integrated healthcare system in the United States. Despite covering from his stutter, despite discovering his stutter in the second grade, he never fully participated in any formal speech therapy until his mid-30s. Finding my speech has enlightened a new path forward for him on his journey towards acceptance. Welcome to Some Stutter Law, Dr. Bilkha. Now
Thank you.
you mentioned in your bio that you had discovered your stutter in second grade. Do you want to share a little bit about that, or do you remember that far back?
Sure thing. Yeah. So I remember I was at a family friend's party, and one of the kids there at that time made a comment about my speech. And from what I can remember, I think it kind of v- validated something because I think I had kind of picked up on that too, that my speech was not normal. And so I ended up talking to my mom, and I'm like, this kid made this comment about my speech. What's wrong with the way I talk? And my mom had noticed that I had a stutter earlier on and hadn't, said anything to me, let me feel confident in the way that I spoke. We do have a family history of it. And so it wasn't something that was new to them.
Oh, okay. So when you first 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 approach your mother, what did the family do? Did they sort of investigate speech therapy? Did they enroll you in speech therapy?
Yeah, so my mom at that point recognized that, okay, I think he's ready to, talk about this, so let's enroll him. So she went to the school, and I was enrolled in the school's therapy sessions. Um, Unfortunately for me, they ended up cutting that program within a semester, actually. So I really only had a short period of time in that. And I do remember going to speech treatment at that age. I know a lot of it was fluency shaping and working through the blocks and pauses.
Hmm. And you also mentioned that despite discovering your stuttering grade, second grade, you hadn't fully participated in any speech therapy until your mid 30s. What was it like from second grade to mid 30s? Like, did you manage to control your stutter, or did you hide it, or you know?
I actually just lived my life. I had a very good group of friends throughout my childhood, and my speech never came into play. My friends really never talked to me about it, and they didn't treat me any differently either. And so it wasn't until a junior high where that's when I had to give like formal presentations in front of the class. And I do remember in like the seventh grade having a tough time doing that. But even then, it was more like, okay, I'll just get through it. And then I didn't really concentrate on it or dwell on those feelings.
Hmm.
Um, and then in high school, I used a lot of tactics to try to help me with my formal presentations. Like I would record the presentation beforehand, and in one instance, I just played the recording, and I was able to, get through it that way. Other times, I would record myself and play it back to myself in an earpiece and while I was reciting it. So that also helped. So those were probably the biggest instances where my speech really came into play throughout my childhood was in school and doing
In
presentations.
high school, okay.
Right.
Did you experience? I mean, many people who stutter, myself included, that I've always had a lot of difficulty with telephone calls. I think telephone calls is one of my biggest phobias, and even to this day, when I hear a phone ring, the anxiety starts to arouse, and I was very thankful when when the voicemail came in, because if I wasn't up to answering the telephone, I would let it go to voicemail, and then I'll have time to prepare myself, listen to the message, and then I felt more confident to make the telephone call. Now, how what was your experiencing like with telephone calls?
I never really had too much problems growing up, and then while I was in school, I was an intern at a pharmacy, and so I had to answer the phone a lot, and so I think it was just that practice of picking up the phone and reciting my name. It just kind of got into a flow, and it really hasn't had an issue.
So what was the trigger or triggers that made you decide to go back to therapy at age 30? What was the triggers?
So I had two daughters. They're currently 1 and 3. And so my oldest is now at that point where she's talking a lot. And while she was learning to talk, when she was about 1.5, 2, she started to stutter, but it was more of like the regular childhood learning to talk stutter. It wasn't like, a real fluency issue. And, she got over it, but just like hearing that and then thinking to myself, she might have a stutter one day, and obviously it's because of my genetics. So I passed that on to her. And that was kind of a heavy feeling for me because I never thought too much about that until it was like right there in my face. And then also, having children, I end up reading to them, to go to sleep. And obviously, I do have some hard times where I do stutter or I have a hard time reading in front of them. And I thought to myself, there's one day that they're going to know that I don't speak like everybody else. And how is that conversation going to
Hmm.
go? And those are the feelings that kind of were like, okay, I think I have some unsettled issues with my speech. So why don't I go find somebody to talk to them about? And my wife was really the one that helped and encouraged me to do so.
Hmm. Has has your children, commented on your speech at all when you're reading? Do they have they noticed it at this point?
No, no, they haven't.
Okay,
No, they haven't. And I think it's only because it's an age thing right now.
okay, okay. Now, how did you how did you go about finding a speech therapist? What was the process? Yeah, no, no. The
Sure
reason why
thing.
I'm asking is
So,
that many people who stutter when they decide to seek treatment, it's I mean this is a challenging experience, and they sometimes I feel that that many people are are not aware that it is an interview process. You really have a right to interview a speech therapist to find a fit. So what was your process like?
actually, I just went through my health insurance and I found the closest treatment center to my work. And so I attended sessions over there. But while I was with that speech therapist, she even commented that, she wasn't specialized in
Mm,
stuttering. But luckily, while she was in school, she had a preceptor that was. And so she ended up kind of referring me to Speech IRL out of Chicago. And so I ended up connecting with them, and it ended up being the best treatment center I could have ever asked for.
wonderful.
So it was really luck, I think, that I was able to find them. And unfortunately, into my second or third session with them, they actually decided that as a practice, they were going to go private. And so they were no longer going to accept health
Mm,
insurance to help the copays. And that was extremely hard for me because I had felt like, okay, I was finally ready to get help. And I finally found somebody who I felt comfortable with. And now I was going to lose out on that because of a financial reason. And so luckily, they connected me with SSA at the time, which is now my speech. And I applied for a scholarship and I got accepted and I was able to continue my treatment.
wonderful, wonderful. So when you talk now about like the arrangement in the stage of private and then these these private agencies do not accept insurance. Correct? Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It is extremely hard to find a specialist that is in a practice that will accept
Okay.
insurance.
Now, go ahead. Sorry.
And yeah, and a lot of that has to do with the way that stuttering falls under as a fluency disorder. And so you're really going to get a very a, a generalized practitioner when you go through your health insurance.
Mm, okay. What what was the name the name of the program that you had taken through your private I mean your speech therapy?
The one that I'm with, speech IRL.
Oh,
So
okay,
speech
okay.
in real life.
Oh, okay. And this this is actually the name of the speech program.
Correct.
Okay, okay. Uh, Doctor, as as a pharmacist, you communicate a great deal, and I mean this, did did you did you have did you have any apprehensions first about going into this field as a pharmacist before in regards to your stutter? Did you have any questions or?
Yeah, yeah, I can't say I did not. I remember early in school, and this was probably after I first started attending speech in the second grade. I think I had a counselor once that made the comment that, oh, it's okay. People like you can still find a job where you won't have to interact with anybody. And obviously, I was very young when I heard that, so I didn't really take it for what it was. And I'm sure she was just trying to like comfort me and make it more acceptable. But, you know, it kind of lit that fire where I had a chip on my shoulder, that I'm not going to allow anybody to tell me what I can't do. And that kind of st- 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 stuck with me, and I never made a choice in my life, especially in my career, where I was not going to try something because I was afraid of my fluency.
Hmm. So so you know you have done a lot of work to to embrace your stuttering or to to accept your stuttering. Like on a scale from 1 to 10, one is a non-acceptance, a 10 is 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 an acceptance. What score would would you give yourself at this point in terms of acceptance journey?
I'm going to have to be honest with you. At the beginning of this year, before I was in speech therapy, I was not accepting of it. I was at a 1. And even now, through my sessions, I would still say I'm under 5. I'm still not there yet. And I don't know if I am gonna fully accept it in the terms of, I've heard some people say that they love their stutter and that they feel like it's a super power. I don't think I'm ever gonna love my stutter. Um, I I do feel like I can live with it, but at the same time, I don't like the way that I sound because I feel like it's a hard way to communicate. And that's been my biggest challenge is how do I accept myself when I truly wish it would just go away one day?
Mhm.
Like, is acceptance coming to a place where you just don't rely on that anymore? You don't think about that, and that's not your goal?
Mm.
I don't know.
Do you sort of do you still still periodically try to hide your stutter, or are you like do you self disclose you as being a person who stutters?
I do not self-disclose. I definitely just talk, and if I have blocks or anything, I just try to get uh, through them as easy as I can. I do feel like now in more formal speaking sessions, I do feel like I will be disclosing in the future,
Mm.
though. But yeah, that's not a normal
Hmm.
practice for me yet.
Do you feel that if you self-disclose, do you feel there's more anxiety? I mean, there's this anxieties lifted from your shoulders. You feel, now it's out in the open. Now I have nothing to hide. There's not this tendency to try to avoid words or avoid situation. Is out in the open. Do you feel more relaxed or
In the past, when I can't say that it had any effect on fluency,
mm,
unfortunately.
okay, okay. What are some of the situations that are still more challenging for you as a person who stutters? Well, what?
I'd say like just your normal o- ordering coffee, any place where I have to like say my name or like introduce myself. That's still extremely hard.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm still trying to find a way to kind of make those situations easier for myself. But yeah, I do tend to not want to introduce myself because I'm afraid that I will stutter like right out the gate.
Hmm. Hmm. When you have a train what I always consider a train wreck speaking experience. Like a terrible stuttering experience or stuttering day. How do what self messages do you say to yourself just to recover, just to get back into perspective? What are some of the messages?
Yeah, in the past, I used to get very hung up on that. And, towards the end of the day, I would kind of reflect on that day and be like, okay, how many times did I have an issue today with my speech? And I would kind of get down on myself because I would be counting every day. And it was extremely deflating because obviously it was never going to be zero. And no matter what I did or what I tried, it wasn't for a lack of effort. Um, but now after going through speech therapy, I'm now able to kind of just get over those instances and not hang on to those feelings
Hmm.
anymore.
Hmm.
And because even over this weekend, I had an instance that I remembered that I spoke, and who I was speaking to made a comment. Obviously, a very kind comment, but they had like recognized that I had a speech problem. And I think about it, but at the same time, I'm not hard on myself this same way that I used to.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I kind of just say, I'm gonna have challenges throughout my life, and there's larger issues like going on than my speech. I mean, there really are. And so that's kind of the way I treat it now. But I have to tell you, in the beginning of this year, having a disfluency, that was the worst thing that could happen to me that day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, what is your, perspective on? Well, this is a question I normally ask. The F word. What would you? What emphasis do you place on the F word, the fluency word, versus managing one stutter? Like, how would you define fluency, or do you think it's a bad word, or have you changed your perspective when you went to speech therapy? Did you put emphasis on fluency, and what's your perspective now?
Definitely. I mean, I went into speech therapy with the goal of being fluent by the end of the year. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a very competitive person, and so I always set really tough and hard goals for myself, and that's what I thought I could do. Um, and so, the word fluency really does not trigger me, but to me, fluency would mean completely no instances of a stutter or a speech impediment. Just perfect speech, and then that raises the question of what is perfect speech, right? Yeah, but so I would say, I don't have an issue with that word. Um, and honestly, a part of me still kind of wants to hang on to that feeling of hope that maybe one day I won't have to worry about my speech and that I can be fluent 100%.
Do you still avoid situations? Do you avoid it? Speaking situations.
I really do not.
Okay.
I would have to say because of my line of work, obviously presentations and the such are a part of the a job. So I would say like if anything, trying to get out of, formal presentations could have been a means to try to avoid public speaking, but I cannot do that. And frankly, I kind of enjoy talking to crowds and I enjoy talking to people. So I don't take myself out of a situation.
Hmm. Hmm. Uh, you know, uh, People who stutter, we we tend to experience a lot of anxiety. Do you still have the anxiety associated with stuttering, like in terms of just preparing yourself to do presentation, answering the phones? Is there anxiety still there?
Yeah, I think like one of the largest ones is when I'm gonna like order food or order coffee, like leading up to that, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about the words I'm gonna say. I try to like rehearse my speech in my head. Um, but that always tends to not work out.
Oh,
And
I've been there
so
many times.
I've kind of right, and so I've kind of just come to this point where, you know what, I'm not even gonna think about it. Maybe focus on, breathing exercises rather than think about the actual words.
Hmm.
And that's kind of helped me
Hmm.
out. I
Do you,
think.
in these situations, do you feel that when you're standing in line or sitting in a restaurant waiting for the waiter, the waitress to come over, do you still there's a tendency to substitute and not order what you really want to order, or do you just go for the gusto?
Oh, when it comes to food, I am a foodie. I will not let my speech get in the way of ordering what I wanna eat. That has
Excellent.
never happened, it never will happen.
Well, I applaud you with that. I applaud you. Like in terms of, what, why is it that we as people who stutter, we, just standing in line or waiting to order something or even to ask a question of a salesperson, there's some sort of a mental, I shouldn't say the person, it's a block of some sort, emotional, psychological block that why do we put so much emphasis on trying to communicate, trying to be quote unquote fluent? Is there this desperate need to be accepted, or is it part of our like past experiences, past negative responses from people? There's a definite, you see, so I think once we have insight, understanding as to what these triggers are, and perhaps we can sort of not put as much pressure on ourselves. Yeah, do you understand what I'm asking? There's this.
I understand what
So,
you're
what's your thoughts
yeah.
on that?
I personally I feel like I'm harder on myself than anybody else can be. And even growing up, I think I've strove for perfection in a lot of things in my life. And speech has always been something that I've placed very high for myself. And so I kind of feel like those feelings of having to communicate clearly and making sure that I do, it's because of my fear of myself and my internal thoughts on my speech. So just coming to terms with that and realizing that, I can block out everything else and that I do have to just be easy on myself. That's helped me
Hmm.
in terms of,
Do you and your wife talk about your speech and how how you're feeling? Because some people who stutter are very uncomfortable, talking about this to a spouse or a partner.
yeah, I honestly just recently started talking to her about the feelings associated with it, and we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary this year.
Mm,
Um, and I realized that opening up to her and kind of explaining those underlying feelings that I have had about that was truly helpful for me. And I think I really owe a lot of, my shift in the way that I think about my fluency now because of those conversations and, being able to share that part of my mind with her.
mm.
And she really helps me and understands.
Why did it take you so long to open up? 10 years. I mean, that that does not surprise me. But from your perspective, why did it take so long?
Because I've come to the realization that I did not want to be labeled as someone who stutters. I didn't want to associate myself with that term. And so, I mean, you could look at that as not accepting it. And that's where I was my entire life. And like I said, I don't know if I'm fully there, but I'm a lot more okay with now saying I do stutter and it is an issue for me.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, this 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 is a huge step for a person who stutters to actually come to a point in one's life to say that it's okay to stutter. It's okay to stutter. And I mean, this is a huge step, and for some people, it 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 is a lifetime. It's a lifetime to reach that point. So, so you're at your point now, doctor, that you can say that it's okay to stutter, or can you authentically believe that in yourself? It's okay to stutter.
Absolutely. I I can 100% say it is okay to stutter, but I do have to say I still don't feel great when it happens, and I don't know if that ever changes.
Hmm. Interesting because that's that's an honest statement because we can reach a point to say that it's okay to stutter. However, the next step is with feeling within that I'm not allowing my stutter to control my life. So I'm controlling my stuttering. I
Yes.
think that's a significant difference. Because you come across as a person who stutters, who's living your life to the fullest. I can say that they're not allowing something to really impact your life as much.
Right, and I definitely feel like I am at that place now where I am turning the tables on it. And yeah, I think you said it really well in the sense that I'm controlling this. Like I'm in control of this situation because for me, stuttering and disfluency is, in a sense, a loss of control. And that was extremely hard for me to accept that there was something that I could not control. As much as I wanted to, and as much as I tried and practiced, I could just not get a hold of this thing
Hmm.
to see any improvement.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it wasn't until I accepted that that aspect of it, that okay, I'm okay if I am disfluent. It's not the end of the world. Like you don't have to live with the regret of what happened afterwards. Because, like I said, I've never had an instance where people have really made comments or, laughed at me where I could say, okay, I'm afraid to talk because XYZ happened. And even with the closest people in my life, it wasn't until now that I'm actually talking to them about my speech. Um, so even my closest friends, they just let me talk. They never brought it up, I think, out of respect. And I never talked about it because of embarrassment. And so it was kind of this unspoken thing that I just never had. Like, I mean, I've talked to people that I've known for 20, 25 years now, and I just started talking about hopefully about my speech and trying to get help.
Hmm.
And a lot of them were like, we knew you stuttered, but we didn't think it affected you,
Hmm.
and it didn't seem to be an issue for you. And so that's kind of how we treated it.
Do you feel that we as people who started make make it a big deal? We actually feel
Absolutely.
that we're we anticipate a negative response, and that's why I get so anxious and so upset that I don't want to stutter. So you think, who has a problem here? In other words.
Exactly, exactly. No, no, you're absolutely right. Um, and that's kind of where I'm uh, at with it. And, it was even hard for me when I joined my speech and we had our community events, and I would hear other people that stutter. And for me, it was a little uncomfortable hearing that because I saw the reflection of myself and I heard the reflection of myself. And I started to think, okay, this is how I sound to the world. And it wasn't something that I had accepted at that time.
Hmm. Hmm. So do you feel that it is important for people who started to really seek out people who support systems, like like a support group, because it really sort of reinforces that I'm not the only person who stutters, and it is hard at times, emotionally and psychologically to actually listen to another person who stutters as well, because we're all at different levels of very, in the various levels of stuttering. And I think just and so sometimes we always feel for for other people who who stutter. We're, whereas I feel that we have to force ourselves to be put in these situations, these workshops with other people who stutter, to to work through this journey of self acceptance. Would you agree?
I think so. And I think it's extremely important because stuttering, it's kind of like an isolating trait, and you tend to kind of withdraw yourself from situations and you feel like you're the only one feeling this. And when you start to talk to other people that stutter and a community that accepts it, you start to realize that you have a lot of shared experiences and you're not the only one that went through something or has these thoughts about your speech. And just knowing that makes you feel a lot more accepting of it, I think. And I think one of the important things is also to find people that may be a little bit more ahead of you in terms of life, more successful, or just a little bit more fluent, to show that there is a progression of this, that you can be there, there's something to strive for. So I think that's really
Mm-hmm.
important for people who
Mm-hmm.
stutter.
Now you're a volunteer now with my speech. And so really, doctor, I mean, just by being involved with my speech, you really are developing a strong support group, and I'm sure that helps you a great deal, because you always have someone to talk to if you have a bad day, or Mm,
Absolutely. Yeah, it's extremely helpful. And honestly, it was really nice to join a community where there were people like me. Like I never thought I would find people that were at the same stage in life or in their careers who had a stutter.
mhm, mhm.
And so that was really helpful.
It is uplift, lifting emotionally, definitely. So,
Absolutely.
what type of volunteer work do you do at my speech?
So I'm currently the chief operating official.
Okay.
So I deal with a lot of the operations of the org. Um, so involved with the volunteer, the weekly meetings that we have, and then as well as some of the foundational back end work too.
Hmm. You mentioned the weekly meetings. Now, are they open to the public as well? Or is more
As
of a
of right
support group?
now, they're open to the
Okay.
community. However, if you want or you're interested in it, you can go to myspeechapp.org and you can fill out our intake form in order to express your interest,
Oh, okay, Natu.
and we will
Oh, okay.
accept.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, do you feel that so being do you feel that it is important for people who started then, and I guess we talked about it, to actually seek out a community of support, a community.
I really do. I really do. I can say that was the point that really emphasized everything that I was learning in treatment. It didn't really go into practice until I was in the community and just seeing everybody and being accepting of everybody and hearing their stories helped me.
Mhm.
So I would say
Right.
yes, absolutely.
So what advice or suggestions do you have for people who stutter to actually self care to take care of of ourselves because because we actually spend so much time trying to we're on this treadmill sometimes of avoidance, word substitution, things like that. So what advice would you give to people who stutter to step off the treadmill of the mental you know, mindset of the person who stutters to do self care? What would you suggest?
I definitely think that everybody has to come to that point where they want to openly talk about their stutter if it affects them that much. And when you're ready to, definitely seek out a treatment. And if that's something that's hard for you to do on your own or you want some help with that, you can always come to um, my speech app.org and we can help you set that up. We can help you be included in our community sessions so you can get a feel for what it is like. We can set you up with somebody who's in the same age group or somebody in the same career field if you want, so you can actually talk to somebody about shared experiences. And I think just being easy on yourself at the end of the day. Because, like I said, I think the one thing that I've learned the most in treatment is that I was so hard on myself. And just being okay with stuttering and not hanging up on every disfluency, it really just cleared my mind of a lot of the stuff that was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the most important thing, to just be easy on yourself.
Mm-hmm. And you're also saying as well that uh, we have to recognize the baggage, all all of the emotional, psychological baggage that people who stutter carries on with, and we have to start dissecting all these emotions. I think to work towards clarity of some sort.
I think so. I mean, yeah, because I mean, I strive to be the best husband I can, the best father I can, the best pharmacist I can, and I can't do that if I have a lot of this chaos happening internally about my fluency.
Hmm. Do you spend much time thinking about your stuttering now during the day?
It's changed. It's changed, and I really do not anymore, and it's a really freeing feeling to not have that
Oh,
anymore.
so you feel more sort of lighter emotionally, psychologically, because
Oh,
because
absolutely.
it's obvious, that that you have reached a point to say, yes, I stutter, but it's okay to stutter, and I'm not letting stuttering impact my decisions, behavior, careers, or relationships. So this 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 has been quite a journey for you. It hasn't been easy, but it's been quite a journey.
It it really has been, and it's only, we're not even at halfway through the year yet, so.
So when did did you start? Well, you've already mentioned this, but so you actually started to feel better about yourself as a burst and starter within the last year. Am I correct now?
Yeah, so I'd say so I started therapy in January, actually, and it wasn't until April that I came to a point in my treatment where I definitely sensed this, like, shift in the way that I was thinking about my fluency.
Mhm. Excellent. Well, I mean, this is quite the feat, doctor. It really is. Now, before we close, now, do you have 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 any other thoughts that you'd like to share with with our listeners before we close?
Um, yeah, so I wanted to just share this one story about so when I went to college, I went out of state. And so, this was a time when I was transitioning from high school and I felt like I had a new start on life. And so I went to college, coming in there with like this whole new, nobody knew me. I got to like reintroduce myself to a whole new a group of people. And I came in there with so much confidence of creating this new persona for myself. And when I met my wife, I remember telling her, like, up front, like, about my speech, which I normally don't do at all. And the way I had phrased it is that, everybody has flaws or something they don't like about themselves. Mine is just out there in the open, and I can share that. Um, and thinking back on that, obviously when life happens and it progresses, I kind of like lost a little bit of that confidence along the way. And I definitely felt I was at the lowest point in that prior to actually going into speech treatment this year. And that was one of my goals, was that I wanted to be able to find that confidence in myself again.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until I started to like think about acceptance that I was able to do so.
Hmm. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, doctor, thank you very much for being part of this c- conversation today. I really appreciate it, because we learn by listen, listening to other people who stutter, and others with 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 communication differences. So thank you again for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Greg. I would love to be back anytime you want me.
Well,
So.
we will have you back for sure. Thank you. Take
Awesome.
care now. Bye.
Take care.
Some Stutterla is hosted by Greg O'Grady. It is produced, recorded, and edited by Paul De Decker, as well as Luca Dinu, who, by the way, wrote this jazzy theme music. Leah Bugden and Alicia Megison command our pages on Instagram and TikTok. Editing assistance was provided by the Labrador Languages Preservation Laboratory, or Labradory, at the Memorial University of Newfoundland. You can listen to or subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and Spotify. Video versions of each episode are found on our YouTube page. Some Stutterla is a production of the Communication Collaborative. Thanks for listening.